All right, sounds good. Good morning. This morning I've got Charles DuFour with me. Charles, appreciate you joining me this morning, and looking forward to our conversation. How about we start with just a little bit about you, who you are, what you do for work, and what your history has been up to this point.
Yeah, so first, thanks for having me, Jeremy. Pleasure to be here and participate in this interview. Um, so, as you said, my name's Charles DuFour. A little bit about myself and how I got up to today, or my start in real estate. I'm 49 years old, have a wife and two kids. I spent 5 years in the U.S. Navy, coming out of high school, stationed in Charleston, South Carolina, and then in Norfolk, Virginia. When I got out of the service, I moved back home with my parents up here in Connecticut, which is where I'm at now. Tried the college route, did about a year of my first 2 year associate's degree in college, and started working for Electric Boat Corporation, part of General Dynamics. We build submarines for the U.S. Navy.
Cool.
I'm still there today. That was back in January of '99 when I started there. So worked a couple other side jobs when I wasn't making much money. Had three jobs at one point.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, yeah, that was a little hectic. I don't know if I could do that today, but yeah, I had to have my 40-hour job with Electric Boat. Worked at a Dunkin' Donuts, shift supervisor on second shift, about 30 hours a week.
Wow.
And then on weekends, I worked on a ferry that goes from Connecticut to Orient Point in New York out on Long Island. So I'd work there on the weekends and do what you got to do when the money's not there, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, so you know all about hustling, right? And working for
Yeah,
that dollar. Yeah.
yeah. I think it was a little easier back in the younger days, but anyway, so I met my wife. We've been married about 15 years this year. We've been married. I got a couple of teenage daughters in high school, and I've always had an interest in real estate. Um,
Okay.
several several years ago, my mother, she never really had a career type job. She worked part-time jobs while I was growing up, and she decided to get into real estate investing, sort of as a retirement, set up for retirement. And just locally in the town I'm currently in, she owned three duplexes. And when it came time for her to get out, I didn't quite know what I knew today.
Mhm.
So I think I missed the boat on that one. She doesn't own them anymore. My wife wasn't too keen on house hacking type situation,
Okay.
living with tenants right beside you.
Hmm.
So I passed on that opportunity. But I've always had an interest in real estate, and that's kind of what got me to where I am today.
So
I'd
why
eventually like to.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, I just want to follow through with you a little bit on your with your mom and those three duplexes. So you said she had several different just odd end jobs, but did she ever talk to you about why she bought those duplexes? What was her reasoning behind that? What was her thought?
So she didn't, having odd jobs, and they weren't just laborer type jobs. She did bookkeeping over the years and whatnot, but she worked a lot of part time jobs with me and my brother in school and whatnot. So she didn't have a 401 for retirement or anything like
Okay.
that. Um, my father did. She had one of her jobs. She had become a real estate agent.
Okay.
Not a 60, 70 hour a week hustling type real estate agent, but
Okay.
that was one of her jobs. She'd become an agent. And I think she just felt it was her form of setting up some kind of retirement when the time came.
Okay.
My father was always handy, so they did a lot of the repairs and whatnot, the smaller stuff themselves. They only hired out if they had to. So yeah, she never, aside from that, she never went into detail
Okay.
of what made her go down that road. Um, but she did, and at the time she offloaded them, um, I don't know, I didn't I didn't step in, and I probably should have. It would have been a good opportunity.
Yeah, that's all right. So, we learn a lot of things from our parents, right? And it's obvious
Right.
that your parents were definitely interested in multiple revenue streams, right? Your dad's working, your mom's working, she's finding these different jobs, gets introduced into real estate, sees an opportunity, feels and understands that there's some opportunity for her in her retirement years to be able to use that as retirement savings. Instead of using a 401k, you're using an asset like a home, a duplex as a way to put money aside. So I think that's
Right.
super creative, and it's always interesting to me raising kids of my own how much that I seen the things my parents were doing, but I really didn't ever like I never got engaged in those conversations to the level that I wish I would have. And so
Yeah,
thinking
true.
about that with your parents, does it feel like it was similar? It was like we really didn't talk a lot about money, didn't really talk about investing, didn't really, they was doing it, but they didn't really kind of talk about that, right? So I think a lot of us are, when we get into real estate, we're like, I wish somebody would have told me this when I was 10.
Oh, I know, right? If you knew then what you know now, right?
Yeah.
And to be honest, if my parents knew what I know now about real estate, they would likely still own them
Yeah.
and still be having passive income. They never had a property manager. They never really, a handyman on call.
Mhm.
You could get to that point and just pretty much be hands off and
Mhm.
still be collecting off of that rather than have sold them. But it is what it is, and
Yeah.
that's absolutely right. Though I never talked specific finances with my parents, even as a young adult. It's probably a little more open now, me being where I am in life,
Mhm.
and then being fully retired. But yeah, no, you're right. You see things of what's going on, and you get the high level answers if you have any questions, but you never really deep dive into stuff that your parents are doing. And there's probably some benefit to that if your kids are receptive and mature enough to have those types of discussions. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's cool. So you had a little bit of introduction into real estate from your parents, from your mother, but really what brought you back around into it? I mean, it sounds like at the point when she sold those that you wasn't quite ready for them. But what was the change in your mind or, in your life that brought you back into the ideas and the concepts of wanting to be part of the real estate world?
So I think what brought me back into this is my kids are getting ready for high school. I'm sorry, getting ready for college, right? Just
Mhm.
a few years out. I think it's the 504 college savings plans,
Yeah,
right? I
okay.
have those for my kids, and money comes out of my check, every check and goes into that.
Mhm.
And it has grown, but when we started looking at how much colleges cost today, it's insane.
Absolutely.
And my 504s aren't gonna scratch the surface, right?
Yeah.
So I think family is really my motivation to find a way, right? And there were two things I was considering, and still two things that I plan on moving into today. One is business acquisition,
Okay.
buying a small business, owning small businesses, not operating them, but purchasing them and having them work for me, right?
Yeah.
And the other is the real estate world, which I mean has never done anybody right. You go, yeah, this 2008 debacle, but over time, there's just nothing better than real estate. And learning and seeing today how quickly when you do start, how quickly you can gain momentum in the real estate space.
Mhm.
Because I'm 49 years old, I don't have 30 years in front of me to build up something for retirement. But really, to come back around. I think my family is what made me start to go look for other things, right? I want the financial freedom. It doesn't mean I need to be rich. I don't need to be rich. But what I do need is more flexibility. I don't want to be tied down. I like New England, but I don't want to have to be here.
Yeah.
I want to overtake my W-2. I can't complain. It's provided for me and my family very well.
Mm.
And I do quite well there, but I don't want to be tied to that. I want to be able to control my own destiny
Yeah.
for the good of my family and in my own retirement, me and my wife, and at the same time have something to leave my kids to make their lives a little better when I'm gone. So that's really the motivation. Um, and having a little knowledge in real estate made it easy to understand as I'm looking at videos online and different ways you can do things. And there's a very close parallel, I think, to business acquisition, which I'm in the Gator community. I know you're from the sub two community, and I know that's been coming up in the sub two community as well as is creative finance for business acquisition as well. And I think that's probably a much more popular financing method in the business world than it is in the real estate world. Um,
I would agree. Yeah.
I think something like 90% of all business acquisitions or sales involve some form of seller financing or creative financing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there. I think that's really powerful as you're looking through it. I mean, you said a couple things there that really stood out. Is I mean, you're looking. So let's take a step to where you started with the 504Cs, right? So those are a very traditional manner in being able to save for college, right? And I'm sure you're probably investing in your 401k and some of these other, maybe it's pension, whatever, whatever that is through work. But the reality is those are very slow and they work well for you and your spouse during retirement years, right? But they're not going to build wealth. They're going to be able to sustain you for a few years in your retirement years, but again, they're not going to build wealth typically. I mean, unless you're putting an amazing amount into your 401k, and maxing that out every year and maxing out the 504s, there's only so much you can do with those investing vehicles. And so being able to recognize that and realize that now is like, okay, let me focus in some of these other things. And I think you said something really cool there about, the business side of it and acquiring businesses in a creative way. You're absolutely right. Most businesses, and especially established businesses, you're looking at these things, they're going to sell for, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, $20 million, right? It's very, very difficult for a business owner to sell that business because there's a very small pool of people that's looking for that specific business that has that much capital, right? And so being able to use some creative ways as you mentioned, is definitely key. So 90% of those businesses are definitely acquired through creative terms. And so thinking about where you want to go and that long-term journey, tell me about why you joined the Gator program. And just for anybody that doesn't know what the Gator program is you're basically a transactional funder, right? So maybe just spend a couple minutes on really what that means and who benefits from that, and then why you started with the transactional funding with the intention that you're going to be able to buy some businesses and some additional real estate, right? So maybe explain to me what was attracting to you on the Gator program.
Yeah, so I was very familiar with Pace Morby prior to coming into this community, and a few other real estate people on YouTube, as well as the business acquisition side, right? Big fan of Cody Sanchez.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, so I tend to try and learn everything I can first. Um, I think that's a flaw for me, right? Because that doesn't bode well for taking action. I will say there have been times in the past where I don't want to say joined a mentorship quite on the level of a Pace Morby mentorship or that type of community, but I've been afraid of not knowing what I don't know.
Okay.
in the past and paid money to make sure I knew what I needed to know, and it turns out I knew it already anyway. So that makes me hesitant as far as joining mentorships like Pace or Cody or any of the mentorships. Um, when I heard the Gator funding pitch and I watched the videos and joined a Zoom one Saturday, I felt it was a very small price to pay to step in the arena of real estate. And it is about transactional funding. The draw to me was not just the price associated with the Gator program, but right in any kind of real estate dealings, the probably the number one or number two goal would be to not use your own money where you don't have to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was enticing to me, as well as just a way to build capital, because I do completely plan on becoming a real estate investor and owning equity and buying properties. And that's not necessarily what the Gator program is about, but it can be a quick way to build significant capital.
Yeah.
Nothing is overnight, nothing's a get rich quick in real estate, but it is a quick way to build some capital that I can then work with. I also viewed it as a quicker way to build income in the real estate world, gaining a solid network across the board and exposure to all kinds of deals along the way. Meanwhile, beginning my journey to try and overtake my W-2 and being able to go into real estate full time. Buying a couple of rental properties, it's going to take a while to overtake my W-2.
Yeah.
So I kind of viewed this as a shot in the arm, if you will, from an income or capital standpoint to get me to that goal.
Yeah.
I think once I free up the time that I spend in my W-2 job, I think it'll just steamroll from there. So if I can work this program and work as a side job, if you will, stepping into the real estate arena, as I said, making the various contacts in real estate investing, and that's really everybody, right? From closing attorneys to fix and flippers, buy and hold folks, wholesalers. You get exposure to all of those industries within the real estate investing. So when I do move into purchasing my own real estate and things like that, I already have exposure to that network. I have more experience to know what I'm doing. And the big thing is, hopefully this will, as I said, get me out of my W-2 that much quicker with the quicker way to build capital and income in the business.
Yeah, I think that's super powerful, right? I mean, as you mentioned, the low cost entry. So I'm actually in both. So I did join the Gator program first, and then about a week later joined Sub 2 as well. And so I can agree with a lot of what you're saying here, because I feel the same way. You're going to be able to build some income, build some contacts, and really being able to understand the transactions. It sounds like from your experience in your W-2 that being able to understand the process and moving forward and making those contacts is key to your style of learning, right? We all learn in different ways, but you're more of that. I need to be able to understand it fully before I take a bunch of steps forward. And especially when it comes to going back into your history, you've been able to spend a bunch of time, you've worked multiple jobs, and being able to say, look, I need to be able to build up this stable income, right? And I think Gator allows you to be able to do that transactional funding where you're partnering with people, you're bringing the capital, you're JVing with them on the project, you're getting some exposure to them, exposure to the process, and exposure to the community. And I think that's really powerful in being able to network in a more organic way. So I think Sub 2 sometimes becomes overwhelming because there's so much going on in it. It's very difficult sometimes to avoid the shiny object, and so being able to focus on one thing, get good at it, replace that W-2 income with some of that income, with the transactional funding, and then being able to invest in the real estate. I think that was kind of the same thing that drew me into it. And I think that's such a powerful message for anybody that's listening, is like, you don't have to understand everything. You took some action, you're learning, you're starting to understand and make these connections. But really, without a community, it's really difficult to be successful in real estate at all. And so being able to have access to all of those, from the wholesaler to the fix and flipper to the title company, again, just wrapping all of those together and getting access to all of the players involved is going to make you a powerhouse, right? Because now you're going to be able to make all those connections and be able to tie everything together and bring everybody together through your interaction with them. So I think that's such a powerful way to build into the real estate realm. So yeah, I think that's amazing. So remind me how long you've been in the Gator program.
Yeah, so I joined the Gator program at the very end of June. So I would just consider it
Okay.
July.
I,
So that's what, July, August, and we're in September. So just over 2 months
yeah.
I've been in it.
So what's been a challenge that you've had in the community? And then what do you feel has been most successful? So what are some challenges that you're going through right now?
So one of my challenges on a personal level, aside from the program, would be I'm not the most outgoing person generally. So the networking does not come naturally to me.
Mhm.
So that's a big part of stepping outside of your comfort zone to make things happen. But it's absolutely necessary and critical to be able to have any kind of sustainment in this business, right? And the more exposure and the bigger your network, not only the better chance for Gator funding or transactional lending deals that may come your way, but I'm going to have exposure to all kinds of deals across the industry, right? So when the time is right for me to take advantage of that, I'll have some of that exposure, and deals may just come across my way organically just from having that network. So as far as challenges with the program and challenges with this as a side hustle, I think it's time, right? And I'll be the
Yeah.
first to admit I'm not an all-star with time management. That's something that I have to work on and stay focused on. But that being said, it can be challenging when you have a full-time job, family life with two teenagers. Finding the time can be challenging. I think from a Gator funding perspective, specifically, where that time comes as a challenge for me is I need to start reaching out to title companies and closing attorneys,
Mhm.
right? To get on their radar, see if I could be a resource for them.
Yeah.
But I work first shift at a
Yep.
W-2. So
Yep.
that's a big challenge. I've been compiling a list of companies and attorneys to reach out to and call. I think I'll probably just have to. I think it's come down to me taking a day out of work and
Mm.
spending all day on the phone to try and chip away at that list. And maybe I do that once a month or something.
Yeah.
Um, but it's kind of a catch-22, right? It's a necessary side to help overcome my W-2. My W-2 precludes me from doing that work. So I have to take some vacation time off of my W-2, I think, to, to tackle that, make that happen.
Yeah, that's
But
that's definitely a big
I can do that.
challenge, right? Yeah, it's definitely
Yeah.
definitely a challenge. One of the things that I've heard from a lot of people is exactly what you're going through, is finding that time balance and finding time working that W-2. I've heard several people that's like, I just gonna need to quit my job so I can do this full time. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's make sure that you're stable and make sure you're going right. And so it's like, because I get that same feeling from time to time. It's like, man, I just want to jump in head first. But you're
Yeah.
right. It is a challenge, and I think it is with anything new, and I think that as you talked a little bit earlier about working multiple jobs, it seems like you're always looking for something to be doing, right? A lot of times as fathers, we feel that it's our responsibility to be providing for our family and providing that financial
Yeah.
security and that stability. And so I'm sensing that from you as well, is that trying to be able to balance that between the family time, teenage kids, your spouse, you're demanding W-2, and then being able to do this side hustle as well. That's definitely challenging, right? But I can sense that you're starting to figure out some of those ways outside the box a little bit. Maybe I need to take a day of PTO, or maybe one of the things that you could even look at is like emailing them and just like, hey, introduce myself, this is who I am, I'm going to follow up with a phone call in a couple days. I'll be honest with you, I'm actually kind of surprised. I'm working on a sub 2 deal right now, and the title company, when I reach out to Christina, it was really interesting because like it's 6 or 7 o'clock at night and she's emailing me back. So it's really kind of interesting.
Yeah.
They understand, especially title companies understand a lot of times that sometimes real estate is not an 8 to 5 or 9 to 6 or whatever it is. It's not a normal or 6 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon, depending on what your schedule is. But they understand that a little bit. And so I think we sometimes put these in our head of like, oh, I'm not going to be able to reach out to these people at this time. I need to do this, right? And one thing that I'm struggling with, just to emulate what you're talking about, is that as well as coming up with that time to make those calls to title companies. And so I'm trying to focus more on the EMD side, where I'm reaching out to wholesalers, and it's like, how do I reach out to wholesalers and networking and building that time, trying to do it on Facebook and some of these other social media platforms has been a little bit of a challenge. And it is trying to come up with that time balance, right? But I can see that you've got that desire to make that work. So I'm sure you'll work through it. And there's, like I say, hopefully somebody watching this can realize, look, I'm not alone at this, reach out to you, give you a hand. So thinking through that, is you look at, understanding what's holding you back and your challenges right now. What are some things that you have for goals for yourself? We kind of talked about your why, and I can see you've got some long-term vision, right? But what are some short-term goals that you're working on now that maybe somebody can help you out with? Share that with us and about what your short-term goals are.
So I guess my first short-term goal would be to do my first deal, because I don't have that yet. Right?
Okay.
So that would be the immediate goal. As far as like my first year goal, I'd like to get to where I'm doing, I don't know, I want to say maybe 4, transactional funding deals a month. I'd like to get to that point.
Huh?
And I think that'll start to get me in the ballpark of, of, I mean, every deal's different, so you never know.
Yeah.
But I'd like to be able to hit 100K in the first year. I battle with if that's a too lofty a goal, but I don't think so. It's probably undershooting. But I think if I can get to that 100K in my first year, which I think I would need 4 to 5 deals per month.
Yeah.
I think I'm well on my way to some point in that second year, leave my W-2 job.
Yeah.
So no, those aren't two very short-term goals. But that's what I'm shooting for. And that's where I need to get some time away from my W-2 to put into this. To your point with the wholesalers, I am doing that. Facebook is 24 hours, right?
Yeah.
That is time consuming and
Yes.
it can be challenging, not advertising on some of the Facebook groups.
Yeah, that's hard.
So to avoid that, yeah, it is, right? So to avoid that, you're doing the keyword searches, you're looking, but it is time consuming.
Mm-hmm.
And there's millions of Facebook groups, right? Are you in the right one? Who knows? There is a tool I've been considering out there that scans the social media programs that'll scan LinkedIn, Facebook, and Reddit, I think. It's kind of an AI tool that'll scan those for keywords. So I'm kind of considering that, but I haven't seen too many reviews on it. It's
interesting.
It's a monthly thing, so I'm on the fence with it, but
Yeah.
could help with the Facebook groups trying to find some deals.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And you bring up a great point there is as the real estate realm continues, right? The thing is our houses are getting smarter. We're getting the smart switches, the smart devices, the smart speakers, all these things. Our houses are getting smarter. The asset itself is still the same, right? but the technology that we use changes consistently. And so I think that's amazing. And I'm not sure how many real estate investors are actually looking at those types of tools and technology like AI to be able to supercharge their business. And so I think you're actually onto something pretty unique there, potentially cutting edge, because a lot of times as you look at marketing and those types of things, these giants, they're building profiles against us about who we are, what we're interested in, and those types of things, right? And they a lot of times know what we're going to do before we know what we're going to do. And so
Yeah.
being able to leverage that technology to your own benefit, I think is a unique strategy. And again, I think that if you can focus and put some energy into that, I think you're going to be ahead of the game, because most investors are doing exactly the tried and the easy, but it's time consuming way is just being able to go out there and say, oh, well, hey, here I am. This is who I am. And I've had some challenges with that, because there's posts you put anything in there that says I'm doing this, and you're going to end up getting kicked off of there, and you're not going to be able to even get your post posted, right? So the admins are just going to delete it completely. So I I think that that's super creative if you can find something along those ways. And so I think that would be awesome to follow up with you in a little while, Charles, and see, hey, what did you have success, or have you had success with this? I think it would be cool to be able to learn a little bit more about that. And maybe in a later episode, we can talk about that process. So again, looking at the way your mind works and how you're thinking about these things, it's going to be super exciting to watch as you go through this program. So understanding your goals and kind of look through that, trying to get that first deal, trying to get the goal of the 100,000 a year. What are some of the aside from the AI, what are some of the other tools that you're using?
Yeah, so I think probably the other biggest thing again goes back to networking, which you can do on Facebook to an extent, right? I know I'm a member of, I don't know, 35 different Facebook groups trying to locate those deals or transactional funding needs. It's not the most efficient way, and there is some networking involved, but it's not like you're meeting all these people, right? So
Yeah.
I think the real estate meetups are a fantastic way to get out there. I've been to a small handful. One of them I went to a couple of weeks ago for the first time, and some are larger than others. But how I got invited to that one is I didn't find that one online. Uh, what happened was one of the Facebook groups I'm in, and I'm in Connecticut, so it was a Connecticut REI, Facebook group. It's actually Connecticut REIA, so it's an association in Connecticut. And I'd made a post on there trying to, walk the line of an advertisement and offering value to people, right? And I wake up the next morning to a message from somebody asking if, did you used to live in this town on this street? And I says, yeah, and I recognized the last name. But long story short, this gentleman's cousins lived about 4 houses up the street from me when I was a kid growing up.
Oh, interesting.
And yeah, it is. Well, what's even more interesting is he's the owner of this RIA group or association, Connecticut RIA. Turns out it's the fifth largest in the country, and
Wow.
these meetups at when it's not busy, there's about 100 people there, and when it's busy, there's a few hundred people.
Oh, that's pretty good.
So yeah, it was a pretty good contact. He was formerly one of the largest landlords in the state of Connecticut, but he had just sold off, I don't know, 30 units or something, but he still had over 100 doors. Lives in Florida, flies up monthly for the meetups up here. And I knew him as a 10-year-old,
That's
so it's
amazing.
kind of interesting. That was a pretty good networking contact. He gave me a 3-year membership to the group for free. Sign me
Oh,
up for
wow.
that, and it comes with free training possibilities. The downside is I'm about 45 minutes to an hour's drive away from the major areas. Right, I got Providence, Rhode Island, about 40 minutes away, and Hartford, Connecticut, it's about an hour away. and I kind of live in the middle of those two. But yeah, you never know, who you're gonna run into, who you're gonna meet. It can be a small world. I could reach out to him anytime as a resource. I'm considering I'm doing one of these interviews with him actually,
Oh, that would be awesome.
which he said he's down for. I wanted to get a little better at it first, but
Cool.
he'll definitely support that. But long story short, these meetups can be great. You're putting a face to a name. You can make an impression that goes much further than on a DM on Facebook.
Yeah.
And you're less likely to be encounter scammers too at these
Yes.
real estate investment meetups. But I think they're a tremendous source. I know Pace has had some stories in the past where somebody at some meetup a year ago came across a scenario or a situation and made that connection. So you're not only meeting these people, but you're meeting their network, so to speak, as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's I think it's a invaluable resources to go to these meetups. Again, I am not the most outgoing social person, so it's a concerted effort on my part to go meet people and but just talk what you love, and
Yeah.
we all love real estate or we wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
And
I think,
it's pretty much the same for all those folks.
yeah, I think that's a great point, especially for individuals that are introverted. The reality is that being introverted can be challenging at times because it's getting the motivation, it's getting the self-talk past that concern. It's like, I don't want to go do this. I don't want to go do this. But it's getting to that point where you're like, no, you know what? I need to do this. And at the end of the day, these people that I'm going to go hang out with, they love to do the same thing that I love. And I feel it because it's exhausting as an introvert when you're in a big group setting like that, right? It just drains you. But being able to be around other people that have the same passion, the same desires, the same interests, it's a little bit of a different situation, right? So being able to use that, right? And I think sometimes those are so under leveraged. Being again, it takes some time to get there. There's some expense there. There's some time there. There's some energy there. But I just look at how many times that I've been able to go, to some of these meetups and the people that you meet, right? The individual that you meet today, the individual that you meet tomorrow may not be in a point where you can support them or they can support you, but you've made that contact, that physical connection, right? Real estate is about people. Yes, we're buying and selling properties, but at the end of the day, real estate is about people, their stories,
Yeah.
their challenges, the things that they're doing, their businesses, their properties, right? It's all about people. And so making those connections is super important. And so I think that's a great tool. And I hope that if there's anybody that's been sitting on the fence line, is like, I don't want to go meet my re-up, we'll be able to use your experience and like, look, this is a guy that was 4 doors down from me as a kid. And, to be able to have that connection. And again, that's just such a cool story, right? To be able to like, here's all these connections. And 6 months from now or a year from now, maybe next week, you're going to be able to have a deal with him and look at the wealth of knowledge that he's going to be able to provide to you. You're going to be able to have some more time, some connections. And again, it's because you put yourself out there, right? So again, that's sometimes challenging to put yourself out there, but holy cow, man, look at the benefits that it's already starting to pay off for you. So that's amazing. That's so cool. I applaud you, man. That's sometimes it's really hard. I know I'm pretty introverted, and so it's a challenge at times. So that's such a cool step to be able to take. So awesome. Cool, Charles. So I got a couple more questions for you. I want to ask you, as you've been through this journey, as you're going through the investing and into the real estate side of it, is there something that you have listened to or read or watched, whether it's a podcast, a video, or a book, that really helped you through your journey, or something that you're reading now or listening to now that's helped you along the way that we could share with the community?
That's a good question. um, That's a tough one because I still to this point I haven't made my way through all of the Gator Vault training. I did pick up the audio book version, and darn it, the name's going to escape me. There was a tax book that Pace had mentioned.
Yeah, tax-free wealth.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's exactly it. So I haven't gotten all the way through that, but I think it's a great perspective that I've never had on the tax law and the system and how it's really the government steering you or steering, I guess, all of us, right, to
Yeah.
providing benefits for getting specific things done that the government thinks needs to be done. I never looked at it that way. Um, but
Yeah, I think that's
it's a
I think
very
that's super
interesting.
key, right? So just to bring that into a closed loop, right? So it's a book by Tom Wheelwright, Tax-Free Wealth, and
Yeah.
he really and I've listened to it, and I've listened to it a couple times because it's like it's interesting that it's a tax book that's interesting, right? The fact of the matter is just like you said, is the government is incentivizing us to do things to have tax breaks, right? They're going to tax us one way or the other. But if we can follow their breadcrumbs of, hey, we're going to give you tax incentives for this, tax incentives for this, if we can follow those things, we can basically eliminate or reduce our tax burden because we're following the things that the government needs done that they can't do. They're not in the business of making jobs, they're in the business of
Right.
providing legislation that allows people like ourselves or entrepreneurs to be able to go out and create those jobs or housing or whatever the story is, right? So I think that's such an amazing book. So yes, I appreciate you sharing that with us. That's cool. So aside from just that piece of it, is there a big takeaway that you've had with that book so far?
I don't know that I've gotten far enough into it to speak to that. Really, though, I think that that was a completely different mindset
Mm,
to the tax system, and I don't think many people have that mindset
yeah.
or that awareness. They just, they just work more, pay more. It is what it is, and just accept that and don't try to change that. But that aspect of being an entrepreneur, and as I start to become successful and can get to the level where I can affect those changes in how I operate, that's something it's just, and to your point, right? A tax book that's interesting,
Yeah.
but that is an exciting aspect of entrepreneurship that excites me and interests me. Yeah, I again for a specific instance from the book, I don't think I've gotten far enough into it. I just started it. It's an audio book, so I get to it when I have some time. But
Yeah.
it is very interesting thus far, and
Yeah.
I'm anxious to see what I take away from that.
Yeah, that's cool. I think it's a great read. Like it's a pretty good listen. I've listened to it a couple times. I first picked it up a couple years ago, and I try to listen to it at least once a year when I'm thinking about taxes. And so, um, but no, that's great. And I like say I'll put a link down into the notes for that book. Like say it's a great book for anybody that's especially in the investing world. It's great book. So. Cool. Well, Charles, I appreciate your time today. I'm going to let you get back to your day. But if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for people to reach out to you? Is it on social media, email, website? What's the best way for people to get in touch with you that want to work with you or want to learn more about your story?
So I think at this point in my social media journey, Facebook would probably be the best place. It's just Charles DuFour on
Okay.
Facebook. My email is info@cpdtransactions.com. You can reach me there. Those are probably the two best places. I am on Instagram and LinkedIn. You can find me there and message me there. I will see them. But Facebook right now is probably my most active
Okay.
way of communicating.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. I'll put your information in the notes here as well. So if people want to reach out to you, they can hopefully contact you there. Charles, this was absolutely wonderful to hear your story and understand where you're at, to be able to talk through the things that our parents don't teach us, right? A lot of times, but the example that they are to us, a lot of times, just from the outside perspective. Appreciate you talking through me about the transactional funding piece of it and where your journey is there, kind of what some of your goals. Again, this was such a wonderful conversation. I do appreciate your time today. I appreciate you talking with me today, and I'll let you get back to your day. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure. We'll talk again soon. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.